Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we are continuing our series of the Valmiki Ramayana. And today we are in I believe, the fourth session of the Uttara Kanda. I'm not too sure, but I think it's the fourth session of the Uttara Kanda. And the Uttara Kanda is very, very special because it explains the whys of the Ramayana, why certain things happened certain ways. So we always have those questions. Why did Ram do this? Why did Sita do this? Why this had to happen? Why that had to happen? So all these are actually explained in the Uttarakanda. So it's very crucial to study Uttarakanda. Having said that, we'll get started. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। मुखं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं कृष्णचैतन्यमीश्वरम् नमामि विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृन्दा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. We'll offer prayers to Valmiki Muni, Lord Hanuman and Lord Sri Ramchandra. कूजन्तं राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविताशाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकिकोकिलं वाल्मीकिर्मुनिसिंहस्य कवितावनचारिणः शृण्वन् रामकथानादं को नयाति परां गतिं वेदवेद्ये परे पुंसे जाते दशरथात्मजे वेदः प्राचेत आसीत् साक्षात् रामम् अञ्जनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशमक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्काभयङ्करम् मनोजवं मारुततुल्यवेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयुतं प्रियं श्रीरामदूतं शिरसा नमामि. आञ्जनेयमधिपाटनालनं काञ्चनाद्रिकमनीयविग्रहं पारिजाततरुमूलवासिनं भावयामि भवमाननन्दनं यत्र यत्र रघुनाथकीर्तनं तत्र तत्र कृतमस्तकाञ्जलिं बाष्पवारि परिपूर्णलोचनं मारुतिं नमत राक्षसान्तकम् जयत्राशत सन्त्रास ध्वान्तप विद्वांसनोदयः प्रभावान् सीतया देव्या परमव्योम भास्करः श्रीराम राम रामेति रमे रामे मनोरमे सहस्रनाम तत्तुल्यं राम नाम वरानने. Hare Krishna, I hope I'm audible. If my voice is not good, just let me know. So the Uttara of the Ramayana begins with a very beautiful verse, Prapta Rajasya Ramasya Rakshasanan Vade Krite Ajagamurishaya Sarve Ragavam Pratinanditum. So all the sages, they came to congratulate the Lord because Ravana was conquered and the Rakshasas were punished. So Ramachandra was coronated at this point in time, and all the sages headed by Agastya, Kaushika, Kanva, Atri, Kashyapa, Vishwamitra, Vasishta, Gautama, Bharatvaj, they all came to congratulate the Lord. So when they all came, the Lord went out, received them befittingly, and then they had a beautiful conversation. The sages said, "O Ramachandra, we are so glad that you have conquered not only Ravana, but we are especially happy that you have conquered Indrajit." So that is when Lord Ramchandra is curious, why Indrajit? To talk about it, he begins to talk about how the three brothers, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan, actually came into existence. And then later he talks about the history of the Rakshasas. While telling these stories, he also talks about how Pulatsya Rishi had a son by the name Vishravas, and Vishravas had a son by the name Vaishravana, who's none other than Kuvera. And later, this Vishravas also gets married to another lady by the name Kaikasi, and they have three sons who are Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan. But he also tells their previous history about the Rakshasas. So the Rakshasas, they originated during the time of creation. And who were the original brothers that were created by Brahma? They were Heti and Praheti. Now, Heti, he did not want to get, Heti wanted to get married, but Praheti decided to do penance. So this Heti, he marries the sister of Kala, who is Bhaya, and then with her, he begets a son by the name Vidyut Kesha. Then Vidyut Kesha has a son by the name Sukesha, and this Sukesha, he was blessed by Shiva and Parvati, and they had three sons by the name Mali, Sumali, Malyavan. These three, they did penances and Lanka was given to them. Okay, so basically Lanka originally belonged to the Rakshasas. But then the Mali, Sumali, Malyavan, they were creating so much chaos in the world that all the demigods headed by Indra, they along with Brahma and others, they went and approached the Supreme Lord for help. So what happens in a fight between the Rakshasas and the Devas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he goes and participates in the fight on behalf of the Devtas. And he actually chops off the head of Mali, especially when Mali was running away from the battlefield. So when questioned by Malyavan, why did you do that? It is against Kshatriya Dharma. He says, oh, you may be talking about an ordinary Kshatriya Dharma, but for me, Sharanagati Dharma is much superior. So this is the final Sharanagati that is mentioned in the Valmiki Ramayana. Now, Sumali and Malyavan, they flee in fear of Vishnu. They vacate Lanka and they go to the lower planetary systems. Then one day from the lower planetary systems, he emerges with his daughter by the name Kaikasi, who Sumali emerges from the lower planetary systems with his daughter Kaikasi, and he goes around to find a suitable match for Kaikasi. There he sees Vaishravana, who's Kuvera, who's flying around in an airplane, and he's very impressed, and he sees that this Vaishravana is a son of a great sage by the name Vishravas. So he thinks that if my daughter also gets married to this Vishravas, she will also have very powerful sons. So Kaikasi goes and approaches Vishravas, and Vishravas unites with her at evening time, and because of that, what happens? They have three sons, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishan. The blessing was Vibhishan, but the Rakshasa mentality was with Ravana and Kumbhakarna. Then brainwashed by their mother, this Ravana, Kumbhakarna and Vibhishan, they went and performed austerities to become very, very powerful. However, they were not only brainwashed by their mother, but also by their maternal uncles. Because this Malyavan and Sumali, they kept telling that, maternal grandfathers rather, they kept telling that this Lanka originally belonged to us and it was taken away by Kuvera because Kuvera wanted a place to stay and he went and he started living there. but we are the original proprietors of this place. So you, being very powerful and being the half brother of Kuvera, you should be able to bring it back. Okay, so Prahasta is sent as a messenger from Ravan, and Kuvera is challenged and he is asked to return Lanka, and Kuvera agrees. So now Ravana, he gets off his sister Shurpanaka, married to a Rakshas by the name Vidyut Jihva, and then he sees the daughter of Mayadanava by the name Mandodari, and he gets married to her, and Indrajit is born from them. Of course, Kumbhakarna and Vibhishan also, they get married to specific people. Then what happens? Ravana, because he's gotten all these different boons and he's become so powerful, he goes around challenging everybody. And one day he goes to Mount Kailash, and when he was trying to fly over Mount Kailash, Nandikeshwar stops him. And he says, this is the abode of Lord Shankara. You cannot fly over this place. That is when Ravan gets very upset and he says, who is that Shankara and who are you? And he tries to lift Mount Kailash. But then Lord Shiva, he presses down his the thumb of his feet, the big toe of his feet, sorry, and then he squeezes the hands of Ravan, and later Ravan sings Stuti from Samaveda, and Lord Shiva is pleased, and Shiva also blesses him with a sword by the name Chandrahasa. I hope I'm right. Okay. Next, so after this was over, Ravan went around and he received several curses. Already he was cursed by Nandikeshwar that monkeys will be the cause of his death because he made fun of Nandikeshwar saying, you look like a monkey. Now, next he went around and he saw this beautiful lady by the name Vedavati, and he tried to pull her hair by force, and her hand transformed into a sword, and she cut off that portion of the hair, and then she burned herself, meaning she immolated by yogic power, she immolated herself. And she curses Ravan that she will eventually be the cause of his death, and she's the one who comes back as Maya Sita. The demigods, they were very, very terrified of Ravan from time to time, and sometimes wherever Ravan would appear, they would go and hide. It so happened that once, when King Marutta was performing a great sacrifice, all the demigods, they took forms of animals because they wanted to hide among animals and not be spotted by Ravana. That is when Indra takes the form of a peacock, Varuna takes the form of a swan, this Yamraj takes the form of a crow, and so on. And because these animals and birds, they helped them to be in disguise, these demigods, they give specific boons to all of these animals and birds. Okay, and we also saw the boons. He also made an offense to Rambha. He forcefully took her on, and Nalakuvara cursed that next time you touch a woman, by force, your head will split into 100 pieces. And then, so he had received enough curses. Okay, fine. So this tells us that Ravana was not a great problem, but the actual problem was Indrajit. But why Indrajit? Indrajit, simply because he had received a boon on account of him. He was very powerful. He challenged Indra in a battle, and actually he kidnaps Indra and he keeps Indra captive. And when Brahma comes to release Indra, he asks Brahma to give him a boon that if he performs a particular yajna called as Nikumbila yajna, and he comes out successful, then nobody can kill him. So this boon was specifically given to Indrajit, and hence Indrajit became extremely powerful. So this is the answer to the question of Lord Ramchandra. Why specifically are you telling Indrajit is more powerful? The answer is that Ravan already had multiple curses and somehow or the other he would die. But then Indrajit was the tricky one. So that's why they were all congratulating Ramchandra and Lakshman that you managed to kill Indrajit. Okay. So then Ramchandra asks a question, were there any kings at all who had defeated Ravan? That is when the story of Kartavir Arjun and Vali is mentioned. How they were much more powerful than Ravan. So hearing Vali's name, Ramchandra says, Vali is great, Sugriv is great, but then I feel Hanuman is the best of them all. He's the most powerful. So why didn't Hanuman challenge Vali when Sugriva was undergoing problems with his brother? So that is when he begins to tell about the birth of Hanuman and how Hanuman received so many boons from different demigods. And later, because of his misbehavior as a child, he was cursed by many sages that he would forget all his boons unless he is reminded of his strength. So eventually, Jambavan reminded him of his strength and he was able to accomplish great feats. But not that he was not capable earlier, only thing is he did not remember his capabilities. Okay. So like this, Ramchandra had very beautiful conversations with the sages, heard about the Rakshasas, and then the sages took leave. Okay, so time passed on, and Ramchandra's uh, rule was extremely great. And many years passed, and Sita Devi got pregnant. And Ramchandra sees the symptoms of pregnancy in Sita, and he tells, I see these symptoms of pregnancy in you. So tell me what you desire. And that is when Sita Devi says, okay, I want to go and offer my obeisances to the great sages who are living in the forests. I want to spend my time there. And Ram promised that he will fulfill the wishes. Now, later in the day, Ram, he enters the assembly, and in a joking and light conversation, he was talking to his advisors, and he asks about feedback from what is happening in the city. So he asks Bhadra, who's the messenger, what are people talking about me? Tell me if there are any shortcomings. Bhadra says, what is there to talk about Ram's Rajya? Everything is great. But then Ramchandra says, it's okay. You can tell me even if there is a negative feedback. And that is when Bhadra tells that there are some people who do say that this Ram, he has brought a woman who was abducted by a Rakshasa, and Ram doesn't feel any disgust while staying with the woman who lived elsewhere, and he's keeping her just because he's very lusty. And he says, whatever a king does, the common people should follow. Yadyadacharati Shrestha. So he says, people, so that means even we should also expect such unfaithfulness from our wives. That's what is expected, apparently. This is how the people are talking. Ram was very shocked, and he asked his ministers if whatever Bhadra spoke is right. And yes, they all said it was right. And Ramchandra had to take a very severe call, because of the responsibility he held. And he says, he calls Lakshman, he tells him, whatever I have to tell you is very painful. But tomorrow, please take Sita. She wanted to go to the banks of the river Ganges, where the ashram of sages is situated, and she wanted to spend time there. But specifically, I wanted you to take her to the banks of the river Thamasa, where sage Valmiki is present, and leave her there under his care. And he tells Lakshman, please carry out my order. Lakshman becomes very broken-hearted because he knows what Ram meant. And the next day morning, they leave. He goes and tells Sita Devi that your husband told that you desire to go and see the sages in the forest. He said, you can leave now, so I'm here to take you. And Sita was very happy. She was very delighted. So she picked up some jewels and gifts for all the Muni Patnis. And then in a couple of days, they came to this place. And at that time, Lakshman, he broke down and he told Sita Devi that your husband asked me to leave you here because of the rumors that is being spread by the citizens. And specifically, he also says he wanted you to be in this particular location near Valmiki's ashram. Sita was first shocked and dismayed because of her cruel fate, and she was thinking, why did my husband do this? What wrong have I done? My life is full of suffering, and so on. And then she begins to talk very strongly to Lakshman. She says that I can end my life right now, but then what will happen to Ram's dynasty because I'm pregnant? And then she begins to console Ram. She says, if I am suffering in separation from Ram, Ram will also be suffering in separation. As much as I cannot tolerate separation from him, he also cannot tolerate separation from me. But I understand that this decision has been taken for the sake of the citizens. Now it is his duty now to really stay strong and prove himself to the citizens that he is not a lusty man. Yes, he can stay by himself. He doesn't have to take another wife. And she says this, if he really wants to prove himself, he should live without a wife, another wife there in the country, thinking of me. And Let him prove himself, she says. And then she also says that yes, it as is also my duty to clear my husband's name and my name as much as it is his duty. And then Sita tells Ram that, okay, my dear husband, but I just have one advice. Please don't harbor any hatred towards the citizens. The king has to be subservient to his citizens, even though they have created some trouble for you. So take care of your citizens when you're alone. And then she also says that please go back and offer my obeisances to everybody there. And specifically, she says, Ritukalani Vartinin. I'm actually pregnant. Remember that, Lakshman. Go and tell the citizens. Why she says that is because she doesn't want further rumors that she went to the forest and got pregnant, right? So then Lakshman circumambulates Sita. He goes onto the boat and then he starts crying. He asks Sumantra why all this happened. And then Sumantra talks about Bhrigu Muni's curse, that Lord Vishnu had received a curse from Bhrigu Muni that he will be separated from his consort. And then also there are other reasons why this happened from the commentaries. Like actually Sita herself had heard the rumors and she had decided that she would ask this boon that she wants to go and live with the sages. And she had the responsibility as a queen. Of course, as a wife, she was hurt. But then as a queen, she had the responsibility to also sacrifice for the sake of her citizens. And so basically, Ram was a responsible king and he had to execute his duty. And responsibility means it's not about yourself, it is about the people for whom you are being nominated as a leader. So you might have to do sacrifices, and sacrifices means lamentation, shoka, and that is the predominant theme of the Ramayana. So like this, there are also many other stories why Sita Devi was put into this condition. One, Sita Devi asked Valmiki Muni, why is it that I had to undergo this? And then he tells that once you fasted on a Dashami mixed with Ekadashi, and that became a big problem. So you should always, even if it is the next day, Dwadashi, it is fine, but then you should never make fast on a Mishra Tithi. Also, the story of the male and the female parrot is being mentioned. How Sita Devi, when she was young, she separated a female parrot when the parrot was pregnant from her husband, and the husband went and suicided, and then he was reborn as the washerman, as per Padma Purana, who became the cause of Sita's banishment to the forest. And then, meanwhile, Valmiki Muni realizes that she has come and he gives shelter to her in the ashram. And Lakshman inspires Ramchandra that he should carry on his work. And then Ramchandra speaks about many stories, like the story of Nriga, the story of Nimi, and the story of so many other great kings in the Ikshvaku dynasty, like Yayati, about the responsibility of a king. And then we saw the story of the dog. There was a dog that came seeking justice. And then we understood from that story that leadership means real responsibility. And if a leader makes a mistake, what happens? He has to really, really suffer. So much so, the dog said that earlier I was a big leader. I was a big leader, sannyas leader of an entire matha. Of a spiritual organization, and I don't even know what mistake I did, and in this life I became a dog. So he tells his own story. So we saw some leadership lessons. So that's where we stopped. So now we have to move on to see what else happened in Ramarajya. So let's see that. One day, as time went by, some rishis headed by Chavana Muni came to see Lord Ramachandra. They told him that there is a Daitya by the name Madhu, and this Madhu has a son by the name Lavanasura, and he is residing in Madhuvan, oppressing the sages who were living there. So, what was he doing? He was killing and eating the sages who were performing sacrifice. So, you all know where Madhuvan is. Madhuvan is nothing but Vrindavan, right? So, you all know Vrindavan has 6 forests, and one of the forests is Madhuvan. So this is the area that we are talking about. And Madhuvan is named after the demon Madhu, Madhukaitaba. You must have heard about them. They were killed by the Lord Madhukaitaba. And Madhu's son was Lavanasura. So this Lavanasura, he was residing in that region and he was creating a lot of trouble. So when the sages came to our Ramachandra and reported the matter, Ramchandra said, "Okay, I will ensure that he's killed." And he thought that maybe one of his brothers can go to Madhuvan and then re-establish Dharma there and fix things. That is when Bharata, he comes and says, "Okay, I am the prince. I am the prince, so I will go and I will take care of Lavanasur." But then Ramchandra said, Bharata, when Bharata made this proposal, Shatrughna, who is the very loving brother of Bharat, he said, "My brother went up, went through so much in 14 years. When Ramchandra went to the forest, Bharat was staying in Nandigram and he was just eating barley mixed with cow urine and performing heavy austerities. He underwent so much. So don't give him so much responsibility. Let him sit back here. And I have not taken much responsibility. So I will take this task of going and killing Lavanasur and re-establishing peace in Madhuban." So Ramchandra said that's a very good idea. And he crowned Shatrughna as the king of Madhuban. He placed him on his lap and he crowns his brother as the king of Madhuban even before he goes. So the acharyas, they comment and they say that actually the mood of Shatrughna was always servant of the servant of the servant. He always wanted to be the servant of Bharat, who was the servant of Ram, right? So that is the kind of mood that Shatrughna had. And such a servant of the servant is actually coronated. He is recognized by the Lord. So we see that little lesson that the acharyas bring out at this point in time. And Ramachandra, he places Shatrughna on his lap and he gives him a very special arrow. Now, this special arrow was used by Lord Vishnu to kill the same Madhukaita being demons once upon a time. Others say that this arrow was also there during the Pralaya Kal when you see this little baby Krishna sucking his toe, sleeping on the banyan leaf. So at that time, this arrow was used for the pralaya. That is one understanding. But the same arrow was also used to kill the father of Lavanasur, who is Madhukaitava. And specifically, this arrow is invisible. It will not be seen by the enemy. So it was a very special arrow that was given by Lord Sri Ramchandra to Shatrughna. So now Shatrughna, he was given another instruction that this Lavanasura, he has a trident, very, very powerful trident, and this trident was presented to him by Lord Shiva. So he says, you cannot kill this Lavanasur when he is with his trident, because that is the boon that he has. If he has his trident in his hand, nobody can kill him. So what you need to do is you have to stop him at the eastern gate before he can enter the residence, enter his residence and take possession of the trident that was given by Lord Shiva. Before he enters the eastern gate of Madhuvan, you have to ensure he doesn't have the trident and you should kill him immediately with the arrow. So don't waste time. As soon as you see him entering the eastern gate without a trident, immediately kill him at that time. And he also was instructed, once you kill him, it's not that your job is over and you can come back. You have to stay there because I've coronated you as the king. You have to stay there and you have to rule the citizens and bring back normalcy in that place. Because at this point in time, Madhuvan was fully taken over by by these demoniac people, Daityas, and there was no law and order. So he wanted Shatrughna to stay there as the king, be away from this Ayodhya, stay there and do some service to the people there. So now Ramchandra says, I have another strategy. I suggest that you first send the army, send all your people, because when you have a kingdom, you also need people, you need army, you need everything. And all of them were going from Ayodhya. So he was assigned a separate set of troops. And he said, send your troops first, but you go after 1 month. This was a dual strategy. One is he didn't want to alert this Lavanasur that Shatrughna has come. Just some random people, they have come, and actually they are army people, he will know later. So he is just sending a lot of people and army. And he says, after 1 month, slowly you go, so that when he is not very alert, you can go and attack him. That is one reason, external reason. But the internal reason is Ramchandra knew that after 1 month, it would be time for Sita's delivery. Right? So he says, Shatrughna, you go to Madhuban at that time. And to go to Madhuban, you have to cross Valmiki's ashram. So as per plan, as per Lord Ramchandra's plan, Shatrughna, he after 1 month, he decides to go, and on his way, he stops at Valmiki's ashram. And that day night he spends there in that area. Ashram means what? There are so many small huts and so many dwellings. So he stays in that area, and he hears from many rishis about many stories, because that's what great kings do when they take the association of sages. They get to hear some katha from them. So he heard many stories, like the story of Saudasa or Kalmashapada. This story is mentioned in the Bhagavatam as well. This Kalmashpada is also called as Mitra Saha. He was a great king, but he was unjustly cursed by his spiritual master Vasishta, and he ended up trying to counter curse his spiritual master. But his wife stopped him, and the water he had taken to curse, you pronounce a curse and you throw the water. So the water that he had taken, he pronounced the curse, but he couldn't throw it on his spiritual master because his wife said that's not right. So he just spilled that water on his leg, and his leg became black. So he's called as Kalmashpada. He's also called as Saudasa because I think he was the son of Sudasa or somebody like that. So his story was mentioned in great detail about respecting sages or whatever. So some lot of katha was going on, and that night when Shatrughna was staying in Valmiki ashram area, Sita, she gave birth to twin sons in midnight. Okay, so when this news came from the lady's ashram that Sita has given birth to twin sons, Valmiki, he goes and he performs some rituals with the kusha grass for the purpose of warding off ghosts and rakshasas. So as soon as the child is born, purificatory ceremony is performed for the child. How do they perform the purificatory ceremony? So this is what they do. They take the kusha grass and they touch the different parts of the body of the child. They rub the body with kusha grass to give protection for the child. So Valmiki had the firstborn child be rubbed with kusha grass. What? The tips of the kusha grass, the upper end. If you see the kusha grass or the darba grass, you would see that the kusha grass has a bottom end and a top end. The top end is thin and it is pointed. So with that, the kavacha, that is the child's body, was protected, given protection for mantra protection was given, offered to the child. So the upper part of the kusha grass is generally called as kusha. Okay, so the child came to be known as kusha. So purvaja jatasa kushair mantra samskritaihi. So the purvajo jataha, the first one who was born, was done samskaras with the tip of the kusha grass. So his name came to be known as Kusha. The younger twin was touched with the lower end of the kusha grass, which is called as lava. Lava means lower end. Therefore, the younger one came to lavena sa samahitaha. Yaschavaro bhavethabhyam lavena cha samahitaha. The younger one was touched with the lower end of the kusha grass and he was given a raksha, and therefore the younger one came to be known as Lava. Lava, Kusha. These are the names of the two boys. So, and when were they born? Ardharatre tu Shatrughna. Ardharatre tu Shatrughna Shushruva Sumahat Priyam. He heard in the middle of the night that the two children of Sita Devi is born. But however, he could not go there because traditionally in those days only it was very restricted, movement in the labor ward was very restricted. Parnashalo tato gatva matar tishteyet chabravit. So like the Shatrughna, he became very happy to learn that two sons of Lord Rama and Sita were born. And actually it is said that yes, he did have a darshan, from distance. He had darshan of Mother Sita and the sons. And the sons were born in the month of August, September. That is again around the time of Janmashtami only. Around the same time, these two sons were born. So, as per Chavanamuni's instructions, the next day morning, Shatrughna, he resumes his journey. And finally, on the ninth day of his journey, he goes to Madhuvan and he encounters Lavanasur. And as predicted by Ram, when he was entering the eastern gate, Lavanasur was without his Trishul. And immediately, Shatrughna summoned that invisible arrow and he killed Lavanasur. So after killing Lavanasur and re-establishing some law and order in that place, he began to reside in Madhuvan and he built the great city of Mathura. So who's the founder of Mathura city? It is Shatrughna. The city of Mathura was established by Shatrughna. And this beautiful city is in the shape of a crescent moon on the banks of the river Yamuna. Okay, so now Lava and Kusha are born. Shatrughna, he went and killed Lavanasur and he established Mathura. Now, this is the time after the two sons were born, Valmiki became very despondent. Tapaswadhyaya niratam tapasvim vagvidamvaram naradam paripapracha Valmikir munipungavam konasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan dharmaknyascha kritaknyascha satyavakyo dridavratah. This is the beginning of Ramayana. So you see, the beginning of Ramayana is when? Not in the Balakanda. The beginning of the Ramayana is in the Uttara. This is when tapasvadhyaya niratam tapasvim vagvidam varam. So what it is, this tapasvi tapasvi means a person who's doing great tapas, austerity. But here tapasvi means a person who's also in great distress. Why was Valmiki in great distress? He was in great distress because he started thinking, Arey, what is this? Ramachandra. We hear so much about him. I've even heard that he's the supreme personality of God. He's the supreme Lord. And he has sent his wife like this to the forest. He has abandoned her. Now she has given birth to two children. What is all this? So he was in great distress thinking, who is that person who really has these 16 beautiful qualities? Is it Ram or is it somebody else? The doubt that the world has, right? The same doubt is the seed of the Ramayana. That doubt that was in Valmiki's mind. That is when this tapaswadhyaya niratam, Narada, he comes to the scene. When we have very terrible, excruciating doubts that is tormenting us, what happens? We come across the answer through our spiritual master. The Paramatma in our hearts reciprocates and we get the answer somehow or the other. So that's how when Valmiki was thinking, what is all this? When he was thinking like that, Narada appeared on the scene. Narada is a spiritual master. Narada is not only the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, he's also the spiritual master of Valmiki. Narada is not only responsible for Vyasadeva to do meditation and write the Srimad Bhagavatam with the Chaturshloki verses, but I mean not Chaturshloki, but actually his tapas. He went into tapas and he saw the Supreme Lord with the external energy controlled by the Supreme Lord, the Lord along with his internal energy. All this he saw, right? He had that vision and then he wrote the Bhagavatam. Similarly, Valmiki also, he was given the Sankshipta Ramayana that we saw in the beginning, the very first the first chapter of Valmiki Ramayana is the Sankshipta Ramayana. So he had this question, Konasmin Sampratam Loke, Gunavan Kascha Viryavan, Dharmaknyasthya, Kritaknyascha, and so on. Charitrena Kohitaha. Like that, he had 16 qualities that he mentions and he asks, who is it that has all these qualities? And that is when Narada says, don't have any confusion, it is Ram only, and all this is there for a purpose. And he tells the entire Ramayana in short, and he tells Valmiki, now it's time for you to expand this Ramayana. So that entire swan, and I mean, those two Krauncha birds, that entire episode is happening at this point after the birth of Lava and Kusha. This is how the Ramayana evolves, okay? And And after he starts writing the Ramayana, Valmiki understands the reason of this entire thing to have happened. The reason why Rama had even sent Sita, why he had the doubt, why all this, why all this tormentation, this trouble, and he realized that maybe it is for the Ramayana to come out. Otherwise, how would the Ramayana come out? So he convinces himself, saying all this has happened just because the epic has to evolve. Because he left her, because Ramchandra left Sita, Valmiki got a doubt. And because he had a doubt, he inquired from Narada. And because he inquired from Narada, Narada gave the Sankshepta Ramayana. And because he heard the Sankshepta Ramayana, what did he do? Brahma also inspired Valmiki when the two Krauncha birds, they were, one was killed and the other was lamenting and so on, and then the curse was pronounced on the hunter, Manisha, the Pratashtvatvam. So all this came about simply because Ramchandra actually left Sita. So he was thinking, otherwise, how would this epic even come about? So everything has a reason. So he was convincing himself like that. And he wrote the entire Ramayana. And by then, the kids were growing up, this Lava and Kusha. And Lava and Kusha were 12 years old. Time passes. They were 12 years old. Remember, Shatrughna, when he went to Mathura, what happened? He ruled there for 12 years. So now it is 12 years past. Meanwhile, what has happened in this 12 years? Valmiki has written the Ramayana. He has propagated his Rama Katha. He has taught people how to sing it in particular meters. And he also had little Gurukuli boys whom he was training nicely. And he also trained Lavakusha since they were young. And now it was 12 years old. Okay. So now Shatrughna, he thought he wanted to visit home. It was 12 years. He wanted to go and see his brothers. So Shatrughna was traveling to Ayodhya and he wanted to stay for some days in Ayodhya, holiday. He wanted to take holiday and he wanted to go back. So when he was traveling back, at that time, again he stops at the region of Valmiki Muni's ashram. And in that region, of course, there are many, many little huts and all that. And he stays there. And there from different huts, he's hearing this beautiful singing of the Ramayana. Very, very beautiful, melodious singing of young boys. And he's very, it's like Gandharva music for him. And he's very enchanted. And even some of the soldiers, they are so curious and they want to go inside the ashrams and have a look, like spy inside and see who are these people who are singing. But then Shatrughna says, don't do that. We don't have the permission. You just cannot go and try to find out all that. And there are many magical things that happen in the ashram of great sages. Let us not interfere. So then he goes to Ayodhya. He stays in Ayodhya for 7 days and then he returns to Mathura. So he has heard that some boys are singing very beautifully the Ramayana. Okay. So now Shatrughna came, he went back, he's back to Madhuban. Lavakusha are growing very nicely. They are learning the Ramayana. Meanwhile, what is happening in Ayodhya? One day, an elderly Brahmin, he came from a village outside Ayodhya and he comes to Ram's palace carrying the body of his dead child in his arms. So his son was dead and he was carrying that child in his arms. He was so grief stricken and he was continuously crying. He was looking at the child and he was telling, oh, my dear child, what terrible crime did I do in a previous life that I should see the death of my only son? You are not even 14, and your mother and I will now die out of grief without a son. What mistake did I do? I've never spoken a lie. I've not done any injury to any animal. And moreover, this is the kingdom of Ram. So what is this? If my son has died in front of my eyes, then it appears that I am not responsible for this. The king is responsible for this. If the king is dharmic, if the king is doing everything right, then how can a father see the death of his own son? So he comes and he starts complaining to Ram. He says, you claim yourself to be the great ruler in the line of the Ikshvaku dynasty. But look at this, in Ramarajya, one child has died before his parents. So this is not fair. This is it's a sin on the part of the king. Are these sins not haunting you? So he goes and he challenges the king. And Ram was shocked, looking at the Brahmin's plight. So Ram calls all his advisors, who are Markandeya Rishi, Maudgalya Rishi, Kashyapa Rishi, Katyayana, Jabali, Gautama, Narada. All these are great sages. So he requests all the sages to come to his rescue. And he offers some obeisances. And he says, look at this, there is a Brahmin who's making these accusations. What should I do? How can I resolve this issue? I have not made any sin, but there is something wrong in the kingdom. What's happening? And that's when Narada says, I will disclose the reason of the child's death. Then you can see whatever is fit you can do. Narada explains. See, in the first Yuga, which is called a Satya Yuga or the Krita Yuga, Brahmanas, they performed austerity and they achieved liberation from material bondage. And this was the golden age, okay? And there were no untimely deaths and everything was going very nicely in the age of Satya Yuga. Then later came the Treta Yuga. In the Treta Yuga, the Kshatriyas became as qualified as the Brahmanas and both of them were allowed to perform austerities. In Dwapara Yuga, of course, irreligiosity will increase and many irregularities will be introduced and even Vaishyas will be allowed to perform austerities. But the Shudras are not allowed to do so. But in the Kali Yuga, everybody can do austerities. It is a degraded age. There are no qualified Brahmanas, Vaishyas, Sudras, Kshatriyas. Nobody is qualified. There is a full mix. So anybody can do austerities. But then, this is Treta Yuga, he explains. In Treta Yuga, generally, these people who are unqualified, who have the behavior of a Shudra, they cannot perform certain austerities to suddenly ascend to heaven. Okay. So they have to follow the right protocol. They have to gradually evolve and then go to heaven. They cannot bypass the system. But however, in your kingdom, there is one particular Shudra who doesn't have the authority, he doesn't have the qualities, and he is performing severe penance to somehow ascend to heaven, though he is not permitted right now. He doesn't have the qualifications. He is not permitted to enter heaven, but still he is forcibly trying to perform austerities. He is a culprit and there is some imbalance that has been created in the society. Because of the sudden imbalance that has been created, the son of the Brahmana has died. So you take action, see what you can do to correct this. Okay. So now Ramchandra, he tells Lakshman that at once ensure that the child's body is preserved in a vat of oil and apply the necessary herbs and make preservations for the body. And immediately Ramachandra, he thought he must go around the entire land of Bharatavarsha because he was the emperor, right? So everything was under his control. So he had to go around and find out who is doing this mistake. So he thinks of the Pushpaka Vimana and immediately the Pushpaka Vimana appears in front of him. Because remember when Pushpaka went back to Kuvera also, when Ramchandra dispatched the Pushpak after he came, he sends the Pushpak. But he was also given this boon that whenever he thinks of Pushpak, Pushpak would come for him. So he thinks of the Pushpaka Vimana and the Pushpaka Vimana appeared there. So now in that Pushpaka Vimana, he boards and he goes in different directions, in the west, north, east, everywhere. And then finally, he goes in the southern direction. There in the southern direction, near the Shaivala mountain, beside a large lake, Ramachandra spotted an ascetic person hanging upside down, engaged, performing great penances. So he's very surprised to see such severe austerities that this person is doing. And he goes and he begins to speak to this man who's performing austerities. He says, oh, what a great determination. What great austerity. Who are you? He asks. He says, I am Ram, the son of Dasharath. I am the emperor. You have aroused my curiosity. Who are you? Why are you taking so much trouble? Are you planning to go to the heavenly planets? Are you a Brahmin? Are you a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or a Shudra? Tell me the truth. So when asked like this, with his head in a downward position as he was hanging down, from there itself he replied, O king, O king of the Ikshvaku dynasty, I am born from the womb of a Shudrani. In spite of my disqualification, I want to perform austerities forcibly with hopes of going to the heavenly planet and not just going there, conquering the demigods. This is his thought. And he says, my name is Shambhuka. So when Shambhuka had just completed a sentence, Ram immediately he takes out his sword and he slashes off the head of the person who's performing this terrible austerity. And immediately from the sky, cheers came from the demigods. Well done, well done. And they were showering flowers and they were very, very happy that the demigods were protected. And they all appeared in front of Ram and they declared that you have done us a great favor. Because when you perform certain austerities in a particular way, in thinking of conquering some class of people like the demigods, and what if he becomes successful? Then the demigods are all troubled. And this was not the natural law. He had to go through certain purification before he could ascend to heaven. But without undergoing that purification, he was trying to forcibly bypass the system and he was punished. So, Indra, he goes and he tells Ramchandra that he didn't have the right motive and he was trying to unnecessarily create disturbances. And that is the reason that we are very, very happy that he's now punished. Now, Indra, he's very pleased and he tells Ram, what can I do for you? Because you have done us such a big favor. And that is when Ramchandra, he tells, O King of Heaven, if you're truly pleased with me, then bring the child of the Brahmin back to life. And he says that I promised the father that I will bring him back to life. So if you really want to please me, that is what you should be doing. And immediately Indra reassured the Lord that as soon as Shambhuka was killed, that second itself, the life of the child was restored and he's now united with his father. Then Ramchandra, he proceeded. As he proceeded, he was in the southern region, and of course, the sage of the southern land is Agastya. So when he was passing by, he stops at Agastya's ashram, and Agastya was very happy to see Ram. Agastya helped also. He came and he gave the um, Aditya Hridayam, and he gave the beautiful arrows to kill the Brahmastra actually. So he gave a lot of things for Ramchandra's victory. And Ramchandra wanted to stop by Agastya Muni's ashram and talk to him. And that is when, after talking to Agastya Muni, Agastya, he comes out with a jewel and he presents the jewel to Ramchandra. And Ram did not want to accept a gift from a Brahmin because a Kshatriya should give donations to a Brahmin. A Brahmana, a sage, should not go and give donations to a Kshatriya. So he resisted. He said, I can't take the gift. But then Agastya explained why he is giving the gift. He said, I received this as a gift from a king by the name Shweta. And what is the story of this Shweta? The Shweta was a descendant of the Vidarbha dynasty, basically. We know Vidarbha, the Rukmini is called as Vaidarbi, right? So the Vidarbha dynasty, he is a descendant of the Vidarbha dynasty. And the Shweta had performed so many austerities and he was very pious. But the problem was, though he was very, very pious, he had never performed any sort of charity. So when he went to the heavenly planets after his death, to satisfy his own hunger and thirst, he was not given proper food. Rather, he had to go and eat his own dead body. Okay, this is quite gross. But to subsist, he had to eat his own body. That was the only means of surviving for him. In the heavenly planet also, you will get food only if you do charity. So when he was eating on his own body, at that time, I saw this strange scene. Who's telling this? Agastya is telling. Agastya says, I saw this king coming and feasting on his own body, and I found it very strange. I asked him why though he performed so many austerities, he's not even able to get proper food. And that is when Shweta told that though I performed austerities and I was pious, I didn't do any charity. Because of that, I am in this condition. So immediately to relieve himself, that Shweta, he was wearing a jewel in his neck. He takes out the jewel and he presents it to Agastya. The minute Agastya accepted the jewel in charity, immediately Shweta was released from his condition because he had performed a charity to a Brahmana. So immediately he was relieved from that condition. And Agastya now had the possession of the jewel, but he thought that as a sage, he should not have jewels. So he thought the emperor should have the jewels and he is presenting it to Ram. So he said, it is perfectly fine for you to keep this because you are the emperor and ultimately all the money belongs to the emperor. Then he also and Ramchandra accepted the jewel. And after that, Ramchandra asked about the forest, about the forest that was nearby, which was none other than Dandakaranya forest. Remember, Ramchandra also stayed in the Dandakaranya forest. So he asked about the forest. No, wait. Actually, he asked in which forest this scene happened. He didn't ask about Dandakaranya directly. He asked in which forest did this Shweta come and feast on his body. And that is when the sage says, actually, he came to the forest of Dandakaranya to eat his body. And he also tells the story of how Dandakaranya was once upon a time became a barren land. Why did it become a barren land? Because one of the sons of Ikshvaku, by he violated the chastity of the daughter of Shukra. Shukracharya had many daughters. One of the daughter was Araja. So he violated her chastity, and because of that, that region itself became barren. He was ruling that place, but that region itself becomes barren because of the curse that he received. But then later, we also know one more story that was told that there was a demoness and she was responsible for making that place barren. So whatever. So there are many stories why Dandakaranya was barren, and then later it became a big forest, something like that. He tells a story. And he hears all these stories, he bids farewell, and he goes to Ayodhya. Now, Ram, after he came to Ayodhya, he wanted to perform many sacrifices. So he wanted to do the Rajasuya sacrifice. Now, when you do a Rajasuya sacrifice, you will be challenging many kings, okay? When he expressed his desire to perform the Rajasuya Yajna, at that time, Bharata discouraged him. He told his brother, I don't think you should do Rajasuya Yajna because unnecessarily you'll be inviting kings for wars and there will be a lot of death and massacre. We don't want that. Rather, I think you should do an Ashwamedha Yajna. Because if you do Ashwamedha Yajna, then the entire kingdom will become purified. Everybody, all the citizens will be benefited. So Lakshman also suggested that Ashwamedha Yajna is a very good idea. And he tells about how after killing Vritrasur, Indra himself performed the Ashwamedha Yajna to relieve himself of sins. And he also talks about how this Sudyumna, we read his story in the beginning of the 9th canto of Bhagavatam. The Sudyumna, he was cursed to be 1 month man, 1 month woman. So he had this dual gender problem. 1 month he was a male, 1 month he was a female. And in his male body, he had some children with his wife. In his female body also, he had children with Buddha, Ila Buddha. And then the entire Chandravamsha started from there. So like that, the Sudyumna, he had this problem, and how he got rid of that problem is after he performed the Ashwamedha Yajna, he completely got his malehood. That is another story. So he says, okay, so let's perform the Ashwamedha Yajna. Immediately, Ramachandra, he ensured that there was a nice black horse that was chosen to be the Ashwa of the Ashwamedha Yajna. And he let loose that horse. And of course, that horse will have you know how this works, right? Like it'll have a little brass plate or something tied to its forehead saying that if at all anyone wants to challenge, you can stop the horse and all like that. There are some rules. So basically that horse is let loose, and whichever land that horse goes, it is all coming under the control of the emperor. That's what it means. And then afterwards, there's a big sacrifice that is conducted, and that purifies the atmosphere and benefits everybody. So the Ashwamedha sacrifice began, and it went on very nicely. And where Ramchandra performed the sacrifices, he performs the sacrifice in Naimisharanya. Hmm? This is something you want to remember. Naimisharanya is a very interesting place. Actually, I just realized that this time when I was reading Uttarakhand, that Naimisharanya is the birthplace of Srimad Bhagavatam. Naimisharanya, in one sense, is also the birthplace of the Ramayana. Why? Because Lavakusha, they come and they recite in the intervals of the sacrifice, they recite the Ramayana. So Naimisharanya is a very important place, apparently. Many of the Puranas were also recited in Naimisharanya. So in Naimisharanya, the sacrifice commenced, and there was a great distribution of wealth and foodstuffs to everybody. And meanwhile, when the sacrifice had begun, Ramachandra, you cannot do fire sacrifices without a wife, actually. Only Grihasthas can do fire sacrifices, and unmarried people cannot do. Okay. So you need a wife, because the wife only has to give permission to light the fire, for the Yajaman to light the fire. If there is no wife, they can't do fire sacrifice. Sannyasis cannot do, brahmacharis cannot do, only grihasthas do. That too, the wife should be alive. That is when you can do a fire sacrifice. And it is interesting that in those days, grihasthas had to do fire sacrifice all their life. That's why, I mean, this is strange, but I know many people might not like this. But the point is why in ancient times, even if the wife dies, they would take another wife, is to continue to perform the sacrifice, actually. Because you cannot continue to perform that sacrifice without the permission of a wife, actually. Especially if you're doing something like an Ashwamedha, Gomedha, if you're doing the Pancha Mahayajna that every Grihastha has to do. So these things, they have to continue. It's a rule that once you start, you can't stop. But the wife should be there. So then what do? They take one more wife. Now, what did Ram say? What did Sita tell when she left Ram? She said, you better prove yourself. So don't take another wife. Stay by yourself. She told that, right? So what does Ram do? He creates a very beautiful golden vigraha of Mother Sita. And it's a very nice thing that Ramchandra does. And is it sanctioned in the Shastras? Yes. In the Apastamba Sutra, it is mentioned that if your bharya, if the wife is not with you, if she is either she died and you're not able to take another wife, or you don't want to take another wife and you have to perform a yajna or a sacrifice, basically, or if your wife is in a distant place, or if she's separated from you or she's in a foreign travel, if she's not well, for example, if they're not keeping well, then how to perform the sacrifice without a wife? You have two options. You can either create the form of your wife with the help of darba grass. You can weave darba grass and create the form of your wife, or you can create a golden image of your wife and you can keep that as a representation. And specifically, it is mentioned that in this case, we know Sita Devi is non-different from Lakshmi, and she was directly invoked. Mahalakshmi was invoked in the deity of Sita Devi, and she was there present in life and spirit right there with Ramachandra. So a black horse was sent around, the yajna commenced. And like this, Ramchandra not only did he perform one Ashwamedha Yajna, he performed multiple Ashwamedha Yajnas continuously, year after year. He was performing many multiple Ashwamedha Yajna. Now, Ashwamedha Yajna, when you're performing, it's not that you have started it in Naimisharanya, you have to stay there only throughout your life. It's not like that. You can take breaks and you go in and out, and it's a big process, actually. It goes on for many years, and the fire has to not be put off. It will go on. At the end of the year, the sacrifice is completed. If you want to, I don't know if it's the end of the year, whatever the time limit is, the sacrifice, after it ends, you can perform a new sacrifice, basically. So that is what he was doing. And during this time, Valmiki, remember, we just saw his situation. It was 12 years, and he was thinking, he had taught the Valmiki the Ramayana completely to both Lava and Kusha, and they started reciting it nicely. So Valmiki was thinking at this point in time, I think the Ramayana is born now. The reason why Sita was left in my ashram is so that the birth of the Ramayana can happen. And that has been fulfilled. The boys have grown up nicely and they are also becoming youth. Now it's time for the boys to go back to and rejoin their parents and the parents to unite and everything to become normal. This period is over. So let it be that soon Sita is united with Ram and the children are also united with Ram. So he thought that he has to come up with a good plan to make this happen. And he calls the two boys and he says, that now you have learned the Ramayana and I want you to go around the entire land singing the Ramayana. Go to the house of Brahmanas, go to the ashramas of rishis, go to the places of great kings, sing the Ramayana while wandering through the city streets and while traveling through all the countryside. He tells, first also, I want you to go to Ayodhya first. And if Ram invites you inside the palace to recite the Ramayana, you can do so in front of all the Brahmanas. But however, never accept any payment in return. If they give you gold coins or gifts, you say, no, 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 what is the use of gold for Muni Balakas? We just subsist on fruits and roots. And if Ramchandra asks you, whose son are you? You should simply say that you're Valmiki's disciples. So like this, the two boys, they began to sing the Ramayana. They sang 20 chapters per day in 25 days, which means it's a total of 500 chapters. Okay. 20 chapters a day in 25 days. So you can imagine at how beautifully they were chanting and they had to take breaks. During the Ashwamedha Yajna, during break time, they would listen to the chanting and the entertainment and all that, these people. So anyway, Valmiki says, when people ask you, who you are, you should tell that we are the disciples of Valmiki. He's our spiritual master and he is the author of this Ramayana. And it consists of 6 parts: Balakanda, Ayodhya Kanda, Aranya Kanda, Kishkinda Kanda, Sundara Kanda, Yuddha Kanda, and an additional part that explains your concluding pastimes, which is Uttara Kanda. And you can ask him that if he desires, you would like to recite the entire Ramayana through the intervals of the entire sacrifice. Because in the I told you, in the sacrifice also, there'll be some intervals. And that time the king is allowed to hear some recitals and poetry or whatever. And at that time, you can offer this thing to Ram that you can hear this recitation by us. So the sacrifice had commenced. Valmiki told Lava and Kusha, told them to sing. And he told them, you go to all these places. And they proceeded and they began to recite the epic of the Ramayana with stringed instruments. You see that beautiful, there are some beautiful pictures of them holding this string instrument. It's not really like a full-fledged veena, but something lighter. Okay, and they hold that and they just twang it and they go and sing the Ramayana. And they had very beautiful voices like Gandharvas, and it was very, very melodious. They went around singing. And everybody who saw them singing, they were captivated by their recitation. And finally, they were brought in front of Ram to recite the Ramayana and in between the Ashwamedha Yajna. So during the Ashwamedha Yajna, there were breaks and different types of musicians, Puranic reciters, entertainers, they all would go and perform. And like that, Lavakusha was also called in and they were beautifully singing the Ramayana in front of Ram. So while these two boys were reciting the Ramayana in such an impeccable manner, Ram listened with great curiosity and attention. And when they were singing these beautiful pastimes of the Lord, people were so amazed to see the similarity between Lord Ram and these two boys. They were thinking these two boys, they just look like Ram. The only difference is they are dressed in deer skin, but Ram is dressed in royal clothes. So the people were also thinking there is such a beautiful similarity. Now, if you rewind your memory, how Ramayana began, of course, Ramayana begins with that Tapaswadhyaya Niratam verse. where Valmiki is confused, and then he sees Narada and he asks Narada, who is the one who has 16 qualities. And then Narada tells the Sankshet Rama and he says, it is indeed Ramchandra. Then he goes to the river Tamasa and then he sees the two crowncha birds and he spells a curse, and that curse becomes a blessing. And then Brahma tells, this is the first verse of your Ramayana. He writes the Ramayana, and how does he say? If you follow that first part, first few chapters of Ramayana in the Balakand, you see that Lavakusha are singing this to Rama, and Rama is listening to it, and he's coming and sitting in the front, and he's so absorbed in hearing the Ramayana. That's how the Ramayana starts, and then it begins with Dasharath. Once upon a time, they lived a king by the name Dasharath. So now you see how Uttarakanda connects back to the Balakanda. This is the connecting point. Okay. So now Lavakusha, they came and they sang in front of Ram, and Ram was so happy. And Ram was very pleased, and he tells Lakshman, give these boys 18,000 gold coins and give them some nice costly garments. But then when they were offered these gifts, Lava and Kusha, they refused and they said, what is the use of gold for ascetics who are living on fruits and roots? Because this is the dialogue they are spiritual master Valmiki taught them. So they go and tell the same dialogue. What is the use of gold and jewels for Muni Balakas? We just live on fruits and roots. So Ramchandra was so astonished and he asks this question, how many parts are there and who composed it? And he says, yeah, our spiritual master Valmiki composed this poem. It consists of 6 parts, Balakanda, Ayodhyakanda, Aranyakanda, Kishkinda Kanda, Sundara Kanda, Yuddha Kanda, and there is also an additional part that describes your concluding pastimes. If you desire, we can sing the entire Ramayana during your breaks in the sacrifice. And both Lava and Kusha, they stayed there for many days and they were reciting the Ramayana. We saw how 20 chapters a day or 500 chapters they had to recite. So at last, towards the end, especially during the Uttarakanda section, that is when Ramchandra could understand. He could take some clues from their recitation and he could understand these must be the sons of Sita. These must be the twin sons of Sita. And I have no doubts about it. So like this, Ram's heart, it melted because he could understand that these two are actually my sons. And he called for some messengers. His desire to see Sita intensified. Ram said, oh, my dear, he was so keen on seeing Sita at this point in time. He really wanted to unite with Sita again. So he called his messengers and he says, can you please go to Valmiki's ashram and please request him to send back Sita. I want to take back Sita. I want the approval of the citizens of Ayodhya. The reason I had to send her is because of the accusations that were made against her. But now I'll be so happy. It's been 12 years. The sons have grown up. I'll be so happy if she comes back and if the citizens can accept her at least now. So he sends a message to Valmiki's ashram saying that he really wants Sita back. And if the citizens can accept her, it will be wonderful. But then when Sita hears this message, when the message comes to Valmiki's ashram, Valmiki reads the message to Sita. Sita was not interested in accepting the proposal. She was not ready to take any more tests and trials from the citizens. She had taken a decision in her mind. She thought, I will appear in front of them, but I don't think I'm going to accept their proposal. So she was taken by Valmiki. She was dressed in a beautiful red colored sari. And she started off for Ayodhya. And a large crowd had gathered from all corners of the kingdom. And demigods headed by Lord Brahma and other demigods and great rishis, Vanara, citizens, ministers, Rakshasas, everyone got the news that Sita is going to come back and the citizens are going to witness another oath taking by Sita, and they are all going to accept her, and Ram is going to be united with Sita after 12 years. So people had come from all over the world. So Tam Rishim Prishtata Sita Tvanvagacchata Vagmukhi Kritanjali Bhashpagala Kritam Rama Manogatam. Kritanjali Bhashpagala. So she had her hands folded. She was Vanmukhi. That means she was looking down, reddish cloth, hands folded, eyes full of tears. So, like this, she was walking very quietly behind Valmiki. Seeing the scene of Sita coming into the assembly like that, many people started speaking out. They said, Sadhu Rameti Kechitu, Sadhu Siteti Chapare, उभावेव च तत्रान्ये प्रेक्षकाः samprachukshu. Some people said sadhu sadhu Rama, some others said sadhu sadhu Sita, and some said both of them are the perfect couple. Valmiki walked. Sita was behind. Her head was bent low. Her palms were joined. Tears were filled in her eyes. And she had Lord Ramachandra firmly fixed inside her heart. And their citizens were all looking at Sita Devi. They were waiting to hear the great oath that Sita is going to take. And Valmiki went near Ram and he said, I have brought your Sita. And although you loved Sita so much, you were completely convinced of her innocence. Still, you had to be separated from her because of the unscrupulous comments made by people. By dint of my spiritual vision, I know Sita is pure, and I have come here to proclaim this truth in front of you and all the citizens. Sita is undoubtedly pure. So he makes that statement. Ram gazes upon Sita with love. He's looking at her, and then he looks at the assembly and he announces to the assembly, Valmiki Rishi has declared this, and I accepted it. Even now, I accepted it. Previously, she had to undergo a test in Lanka. She entered fire. The demigods testified her. And I was so happy to bring her back to Ayodhya. Still, people began to criticize us. And with great reluctance, I had to send her away. Now I have decided if Sita can again take an oath, prove herself in front of all of you, she can be united with me again. She's the wife I dearly love. I want to be with her. Sita didn't even look up. Her eyesight was cast down. She didn't even want to answer anybody. She made 3 vows. She was asked to make vows. So she made 3 vows. Yatayam ragavadhanyam manasapi na chintaye yata me madhavi devi vivaram datumarhati manasa karmana vacha yata ramam samarchaye तथा मे माधवी देवी विवरं दातुमर्हति यतैतत्यमुक्तं मे वेद्मि रामात् परं न च तथा मे माधवी देवी विवरं दातुमर्हति. She made 3 vows. She said, O Goddess Earth, Madhavi Devi, please hear my petition. If since the time of my marriage I have never thought of anyone but Ram, number 1, if I have never thought of anyone but Ram. 2, if I have never loved any man other than my husband. And if I have not thought a word or in action or in mind dwelt on anyone else other than Ram, then please give me a place within you. I cannot experience the shame of facing the slanderous fault-finding people. And as Sita was making this vow, Madhavi Devi, earth, suddenly opened up out of the crevices of earth, goddess Bhumi Devi, she majestically arose. She was seated on a celestial throne that was decorated with divine serpents, and she smilingly welcomed her daughter Sita into her arms. She called her daughter, "Please come and take a seat by my side." Then all the beings in the sky and the earth, they looked in astonishment, and the divine throne began to descend into the interiors of the earth along with Sita Devi. Sita disappeared from the sight of the entire earth. Ram was shocked. He picked up a staff that he had been using in the sacrifice, and while leaning on it, he vented into his grief. He got into so much grief. Tears welled up into his eyes. His anger flared up within his mind. Ram lowered his head and he declared, "Hey, earth, you have to return my Sita back to me immediately. Otherwise open up once more and I will enter you and I will be united with her within your crevices. Sita, if she is your daughter, then I am your son-in-law. Please give me Sita without delay, or I will crush your mountains, I will burn your forests, and I will smash you into atoms." And he was screaming as Sita was going away. He was telling Goddess Earth, "You take me within you. I am also your son-in-law. If you cannot take me within you, you return my Sita. If you don't return Sita to me, I will destroy this entire universe right now." And that is when Lord Brahma, who was watching all this, appeared on the scene and he said, "Oh, my Lord, please compose yourself, understand your identity. You are indeed the Supreme Lord Vishnu, and this Sita is the goddess of fortune. She has entered earth, and very soon she will be reunited with you in Vaikuntha, in your transcendental abode." He says, "O Supreme Hero, Lord of the universe, you are sustaining everything that lives. Why should I remind you of your divine position? Give up your grief and hear from your son who have come here about the concluding portion of the narration of your beautiful pastimes. This beautiful Ramayana that was composed by Valmiki will spread your glories throughout the three worlds for as long as the universes continue to exist." So having said this, Brahma, he disappears from the view. And then Rama, he goes back to Valmiki's ashram along with Lava and Kusha. And that day night, he grieves the loss over Sita. Ram summons all the rishis. And in the presence of all the rishis, he asks his sons to continue reciting the Uttara Kanda of the Ramayana. And he hears the entire epic in great detail. So it was a very difficult time for Ram. Yes, he had to take a decision earlier for the sake of citizens. And he knows very well, whichever decision he had taken, the world won't be happy. Even to this day, everybody is blaming Ram for the decision he had taken. But if he had taken a different decision at that time, the citizens wouldn't have been happy. So he had to do something. And eventually, he was separated from Sita Devi. So this is an aspect of viraha, love and separation, which is supposed to be sweeter than sambhoga, which is union. Just like how when you are eating a very, very hot sugar candy, a temperature hot sugar candy, you cannot stop sucking on it because it is so sweet. At the same time, it is burning. That is Vipralamba. They continue to relish Vipralamba. After that, Ram returned to Ayodhya and he found life to be meaningless without his wife Sita Devi. He had made this golden deity of Sita, and whenever he performed any religious sacrifice, he had this Murti occupy the place next to him. He continued to rule the kingdom according to religious principles, and that was the duty that he had vowed for the citizens. So it rained on time, the crops grew very well, there was abundant prosperity everywhere. And this is Maryada Purushottam. He was extremely virtuous. He helped up righteousness all his life, and he was an example for the world to follow. He sacrificed his own personal preferences for the sake of the citizens, just to set an example so that this world can follow. And by the mercy of Lord Sri Ram, we all can pray that we get an ounce of their wonderful qualities. So with that, this session ends, not the Ramayana. We have one more session. Okay. Any questions, comments, realizations, additions, subtractions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Danutana. Yashila Prabhupada. Wonderful, wonderful. Mataji, you said this is not the ending. So how many more sessions are we going to have for Uttara? Only one. Okay, okay. Very beautiful. Very sad, and but still, it seems like such a uh, bold decision by Sita Devi, to not again succumb to the pressure of the citizens and everybody else. So love that. But still,
Yes.
yeah, still very
Very
sad.
bold woman, very strong woman.
Mhm. Yeah. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Would anyone like to say anything? Yes, please
Pranam.
go ahead, Prabhuji.
Pranam, Mataji. What a vipralamba kind of separation. One thing I have heard somewhere, and I have kind of tried to practice, is that one day we all have to separate from our spouses. That's a fact. What should we do in order to, benefit the soul whoever is passing away earlier? All right. So the best thing is to do from now onward to see your wife, your husband as a spirit soul. Whenever you talk to her, whenever, go beyond the body. This I'm talking to a spirit soul. And that kind of, preparation will kind of, I hope it it can happen like that. But that will build up some kind of defense from, lamenting. Rather than lamenting, we should chant. When my mother passed away many years back, that's what I did. I flew from here to India, and then I reached there at 8 a.m. city of Baroda. My mother passed away at 2 p.m. But instead of crying this, that, I made everyone chant very loudly, and my mother passed away. So this is one thing which, I have also told my sons to do that, in case when, if I have to pass away. That's where they should, instead of crying this, that, they should they should chant Hare Krishna mantra as loudly as everyone feels separation. But this kind of preparation, I would surmise from studying Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Katha, like that. That's little reflection I had, Mata. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
The very beautiful reflection, very nice practical application point. With the strength of Srila Prabhupada's books, anybody will be ready to face the reversals of life. I think we are so blessed that we have this backing, which many people lack. And the way we see separation or death or reversals is very different from a person who may not have this wealth of uh, or gift of Srila Prabhupada's books, which includes the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Ramayana, everything, everything. Our Vedic literature is so rich. The very first lesson of the Bhagavad Gita is you're not the body or the soul. And that lays the foundation of all the other scriptures. And it is so rewarding. It is just like a kavacha that is given to us in a golden plate and makes us very strong. Yeah, definitely, Prabhu. Just by, we can, I think the process is so beautiful. Like you said, you just keep chanting and you develop these qualities. You don't even know how you developed it. Yeah. So it's a very subtle process. It's not a gross thing that, okay, today I did something, tomorrow I saw a result. It's not like that. It just works like an undercurrent. And the transformation you will see when you are put into certain circumstances. So very nice, Prabhu. Thanks for bringing that out as a wonderful lesson that we all can take home. Haribol. Okay, anything else? Okay, we'll end here then, and we'll meet next week for the final conclusion. That is, now Sita went to the spiritual world. Now Ramchandra has to leave, right? So he will leave next week, and then we will say bye-bye. And we can pray to him that someday take me also with you when the time is ripe. So, okay. Good night.
Mataji. Very, very beautiful. But
Thank you,
we
Mataji.
are going to miss this session.
I know. I
Gosh,
feel very sad.
1.5 year almost.
Yeah, 1.5 years.
Yeah. See, that we have been listening to this. Oh, Mondays was booked for this. So thank you so much, Mataji, for doing this.
Thank you. Thank
Beautiful
you.
narration. And thanks for streaming this also, because then we have it for future. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Valmiki Ramayan ki jai. Har Jai Preethi Vilasini Mataji ki jai. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Welcome. Jai.